GPT is now like my second, it's like my buddy. It's like I just talk to it all the time, mostly in voice mode, occasionally in chat, but mostly it's in voice mode. And I've noticed some real oddities in some of the things that come out. The first one I was doing the other day, do you know, like we're doing these newsletter things at the moment, and I'm trying to create images for the newsletters and for the social posts and stuff. And I found that the best thing to do is obviously the thing that everyone's expecting. And that's that, you know, you create some really cheesy, obviously AI generated image to slap on top of your post. Just don't even hide it. So I asked GPT to create me an image of a sheep, but with a wolf's shadow. And I was kind of trying to go for this vibe of like, you know, Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars. I'm going to show my age now. Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. There's this amazing poster of little child Anakin walking across the desert in Tatooine. Do you know what I mean? And his shadow.
Oh, yes, and his shadow is Darth Vader.
His shadow is Vader. So that's the kind of vibe I wanted to go for. The image it gave me back was, well, it was basically a sheep with a shadow next to a wolf with a shadow. And it couldn't figure out that what I wanted was one animal and one shadow and mix the two together. It didn't matter how hard I tried, how I changed the prompt. I switched into the type mode, trying to be more specific. I couldn't get it to do it. I was trying to figure out why. And then I came across this thing the other day, which is kind of similar, where I wanted a picture of a watch. And I said, you know, can I have a picture of an analog watch that is at 3 o'clock, I think I asked for. And you should try this. You could try this now if you wanted. Basha, show me an image of an analog watch at 4:52. It doesn't matter. Sometimes when the face comes back, it scrambles the numbers and puts in the numbers that you've asked for specifically. But the hands are always in the same place. It's always, every time it does it, the hands is always 10 past 10. And this is mad. It's utterly mad. I was trying to figure out what this was, and I did some Googling. I found some other people who discovered this as well. And essentially, it's because of the training data, right? So the training data, they've trawled the internet. They've got all the images of analog watches, which are mostly the marketing images. And apparently, the best way to show an analog watch is to frame it with the hands kind of doing this, because every marketer does it, and it shows off nicely, like the logo in the middle, the lovely frame of the watch. So consequently, now we're asking, you know, GPT to give us pictures of watches. Doesn't matter what you say, it's always 10 past 10 in AI land.
Yeah, well, I've sort of seen examples like that too, but I don't know whether it's as simple as saying it's just the training data, because I've heard that argument. And I had something similar. So I was reading about something that said you can't get these image generators to give you a picture of a glass of red wine that's full. And I was like, oh, that can't be hard. Surely you can do that. So I was like, give me a picture of a glass of red wine that's full, and it doesn't. It gives you a picture of a glass of red wine that's kind of half full.
Okay, so I guess the argument would be that all the images of marketing of red wine, it's like someone has already enjoyed some of it. You know, you don't show a full glass; you show a partially enjoyed glass. That
yeah.
Make sense.
So I, me being me, I thought, well, okay, fair enough. That might, but there must be some way to get it to change his thinking. So I started coming up with these really elaborate prompts about, well, imagine a full tank of water. And so I'm trying to coax it into generating me this picture of this full glass, and all I managed to achieve was to get the level of the red wine slightly higher. I never managed to get it to generate a full glass of wine. So yes, you could argue, I suppose, that it's so ingrained in its training data, it just can't think outside of that box. But then there's this other weird thing that's sort of appearing online at the moment, which says you can't. I think it's ChatGPT to not draw an elephant. So if you say, draw me a picture of a room without an elephant in it. It puts an elephant in the room.
Right.
And then you say, no, I don't want the elephant in the room anywhere. And it kind of moves it to the left, or it sticks it in the window. But there's always an elephant in the picture.
Okay.
So you by explicitly including the name of the thing you don't want in the picture, it puts in the picture. Now, you can't argue that it didn't have any pictures of rooms with elephants in its training data. So
no,
I don't know what's going on there. I found a similar thing. I think when you're trying to create structured text and articles and code and that kind of thing, the LLMs perform really well. I still think they're terrible by and large at the whole image generation thing. You know, they're still crap at text, terrible when you want to produce any kind of diagram. I mean, there are specialist tools that do this now, but they kind of do it by, I think they kind of do it by getting them to generate the diagrams in code, and then they present it to you in React.
That's really funny. She's like, so this happened to me when I first tried to figure out, to try and get the watch to show something other than 10 past 10. I was playing with it, and I had it in 03 Mini High. So the one where, you know, you get the full reading back.
Yeah.
That can't do images, and it tells you, you know, as it's going through, I can't do images. How else am I going to do this? Maybe it wants me to generate in code. I can do an ASCII one. And it gave me a Python script to generate a watch in ASCII.
And it was probably better. I think that the whole image generation thing has got a way to go yet. And so Sora got released finally in the UK, which lets you do video. And I've been waiting for this for ages, because I was, you know, I thought, wow, this is great. We're going to be able to produce all this kind of cool video effects and stuff for the website. And turns out I'm crap use video.
Creating the prompts is quite tricky.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? So you see examples of some people have written these really simple prompts, and they've managed to produce a really great video. And I don't know if that's just like the luck of the draw. But some of the people that have been going on there, clearly they're brilliant photographers or directors or camera people or whatever. And the prompts are very elaborate. And they explain the kind of motion of the shot and the hair billowing in the wind, and, you know, really quite a lot of detail around what the thing's trying to produce. And they get some really good results. But whenever I tried to add the same kind of level of detail or finesse, I just got terrible results. I've not managed to produce a single video in Sora that I'd want to share with anybody. They're all awful. So yeah, I think, and that's kind of the interesting thing, I guess, is that these tools, they do a little work for you. But as you know, I think we're finding out more and more, the quality of the prompts, and I guess almost like the IP or the codified knowledge that you're putting into these prompts really matters and drastically affects the results. And I suppose that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because if you know, in the world of work, if you've got a particular process you go through, or a particular way of doing something, or some particular IP, and that's where your customers are buying you, then that's been built up over a number of years, and that's really, really key. And I suppose if you have new people that come and join the company, you take them through the whole process, and you kind of build this organization that is based around your principles and ideas and processes and IP and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is very relevant when you're trying to do complex things or produce consistently good results with LLMs. The detail in those prompts matter. So yeah, maybe that's why I'm crap at producing video. Or maybe I just haven't got lucky. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the skill of the user is also fundamentally important to these things. You know, if you know what you're trying to create when you start with, and you've got the kind of the terminology and the way of framing it, then you're going to be, you know, further down the track in terms of being able to use these tools to generate the same thing. You say we've seen that. You know, the best people at using the AI are those, for us, for example, are the most experienced of the engineers and the consultants in terms of the code generation stuff. So certainly where the tooling is right now. There's an interesting comment on on there not being any good image generation tools or models. Do you think, have you experienced kind of specifically using different models or different ecosystems to do specifically different tasks? So obviously there's a great number of them now. You know, we've got Gemini, we've got the OpenAI stuff, we've got Anthropic, myriads of others of them. Obviously some of them are good at really specific things, but are they doing that deliberately? You know, I kind of wonder, is the market going to be segmented that way, or is that just kind of where it
wasn't particularly fair of me to say they're crap. I mean, the ones that you use and the majority of people would use, I suppose, within ChatGPT is DALL-E. I think that's got a long way to go. As we said, you know, the text generation is awful. Mm-hmm. It can't produce pictures without elephants in them. But you've got Midjourney, which is a lot better. You still have a lot of the same problems. But then you've got these other models which are coming out now, and they're much more tailored to doing this kind of thing. So you've got companies like Runway, and they've got a whole suite of tools that that video professionals can use. And they do stuff like character consistency. And they've just introduced this new feature, actually, which is really cool, where if you've got a video, you upload the first frame of that video, and that's kind of its each reference frame, and then you upload the video, and then you can, if you change the first frame of the video to make it look completely stylistically different, it can change the entire rest of the video based on that reference frame. So there's some really, really cool stuff. And there's one I was playing with the other week, which sort of majors in this character consistency thing. So you can upload an image of a character that you've made, and then you can create whole storyboards with that character, and and videos with them walking down the street and that kind of thing. So there is a lot going on there, but the things that bug me at the moment is that when you want something a bit more diagrammatic or infographic-y, they're not so good. When you want text, they're not so good, and they do a lot of the tools that the general public use that are less specialist do seem to struggle and fall back on the weirdisms with the training data.
Yeah, I mean, even the specialist ones that I've used. I mean, I had to play with Napkin the other day. You came across? Have you played with Napkins?
I saw that. Yeah, I think we talked about that in the newsletter, but I've not actually played a lot with it myself.
So I think I've come across it before this latest kind of AI wave, and it strikes me as, is it one of those products that was supposed to help you generate really easy back of a napkin kind of diagrams to express workflows and that kind of thing? That's where the name came from. And they've slapped on this kind of AI layer, and it really strikes me as potentially, I could be getting this completely wrong now. Sorry, Napkin, if you're listening, and I'm doing you a disservice. But it strikes me as like one of those products that they've slapped on an AI layer to it rather than it being, created with AI in mind, because I had a go at it and it was just trash from me. Maybe it's my bad prompts, again, and you can still use the old tools, draw boxes and stuff, and it'll stylize it for you. But in terms of trying to do it from a prompt, I mean, my prompting was rubbish, and it just couldn't give me anything that I wanted to do. But I kind of wonder that you're right. What we're doing at the moment is kind of these general purpose tools, variations of chatbots that kind of give you text back. Are we heading, do you think, are we going to end up with one tool to rule them all, so I can do everything in my one tool? Or is it going to be a specific tool chain? I want to create images, I want to create video, I want to create code, I want to create websites, I want to create reports, I want to do maths, I want to do financial analysis, I want to make diagrams, and you end up with a myriad of tools that are very specialized because of their training data, maybe, or the model that they're using?
Yeah, I don't know. I think my gut feel is that's the way it's going to go, is that you're going to have more specialized AI tools. And these AIs, they're going to be like the apps that we use today. So you're going to end up with models that are really, really great at writing code, models that are really, really great at doing diagramming, models that are really great at doing video, and then a whole bunch of, I guess, IP layered on top of that as well that finesses it. But yeah, I think it was one of the, what was I looking at this week? I was looking at this new kind of model that's come out, because we've been talking about this image generation. Mm-hmm. But along similar lines, you've got these models now and these tools that are doing some really cool stuff with like 3D assets. So for game creation and CGI and that kind of thing. And so from a prompt and a couple of pictures, you can generate 3D worlds.
Right.
And there's a new kind of model that's come out called a multi-instance diffusion model. And
you're going to have to explain that.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. So when you generate an image, it uses, I think they use diffusion models, and you get a bunch of pixels back, right? So it doesn't know anything. It has no real concept of what's in that image after it's been generated. It uses your prompt as an input and then generates a bunch of pixels. A multi-instance diffusion model, which I've seen in conjunction with people generating 3D scenes and 3D models, it has an understanding of the different objects that it's trying to create within the output. Okay. So if you were to ask it to create me a model of a room that's got a sofa and a lamp and a table in it, it would treat the model of the sofa and the lamp and the table differently. It would have a concept of that in its head.
Well, so it's a bit like the impact that ray tracing had, for example, on graphics and lighting. It was no longer single scene lighting from spots. The lighting was bouncing off and reacting with the context of the other surfaces and the other lights in the scene. So it's sort of contextually aware. Right,
yeah. The model is now aware that there are various things within the scene, and it can treat them differently and it can tweak them differently as well. So I guess with follow-up prompts as well, it allows you to to focus in on particular parts of the scene. And I thought that was quite interesting. We talked about diffusion models a little bit last time, but this is the first time I've seen something which has a much more elaborate context or understanding of different parts of a whole.
Yeah, I mean, the ability of these tools to do some of this stuff's incredible. I mean, you mentioned there's creating videos from a single frame. It reminded me of ByteDance TikTok guys. And I think they put out I think it was just a research paper. I don't think it's a product or a thing you can play with yet. But basically what the demos that they showed and out basically said, from a single image, we can generate a video of any length doing anything. And it was just incredible. And obviously, you think where their training data come from, TikTok, but their video generation engine off the back of those single images was just incredible. If it turns out to be what it looks like, I guess it's the same idea, isn't it? It's this kind of, I don't know, but it's like these diffusion models behind the scenes, and then how you kind of get from there to having something that you can then control and edit on the fly, I guess, is where a lot of these things fall down. Because I mean, again, going back to kind of the very simple Bali kind of attempts at basic imagery, you get the first image, bang it, and you think, oh, that's kind of close, but can you just like change the color of this slightly, and also you get a completely different image back because it can't do
exactly.
that sequential.
And I think so. If DALI was that moved to that kind of multi-instance diffusion model, then potentially you would have a better concept of the layers. So you could say, well, I like this, but I want the sky to be red or something, and it would understand. And at the moment, obviously, it doesn't, and you're getting the kind of results that you're describing there. So I thought there was something interesting you said actually there about TikTok and the fact that ByteDance can generate these models that are particularly good at doing video because they've got a wealth of data at their disposal, right? Their whole business is video.
So we're making a big assumption there. That's a huge assumption that I made, that is where their training data has come from. It's possibly a huge coincidence that it's the same company. Possibly. Caveat.
Yeah, okay. But I think that you've got, because I've been playing around with the different AIs a lot recently. So I've been comparing Claude with ChatGPT and with Grok. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you use Grok. Grok is the most unhinged thing I've ever seen. Everyone is worried about safety and responsible AI, and Grok have just gone, no,
they just turned off the safeties. They're going to
give you the toilet roll conversations that you might be used to on Twitter. It's fascinating. It's it's quite entertaining. What's good about Grok though, or what's different about it, and what makes it unique and valuable, I think, compared to the other models or the other agents, is it has access to the live data on Twitter.
Right. Okay.
Right, so you've got. I mean, so if we talk about GPT, it's got a cutoff date for its knowledge. So some point in 2024, the model was created, and that's kind of its baked-in knowledge, and that's the wiring that it's got in its digital brain. And then now you can search the web. So for niche data and for research purposes and all that kind of stuff, it can go off and it can augment its digital brain with live knowledge from the web. But Grok is continually updated from Twitter. Now, this means that if you want to research something that's literally just happened in the last day, or you want to do some kind of sentiment analysis, or you want to come up with some kind of social media plan, then it's got access to all of the conversations and all of the tweets and all of the stuff that's ever happened and is currently happening on those subjects, which means you get some pretty good live responses.
And I guess as well some very interesting bias. It's all coming from X. We're talking about bias in images. Well, there's certain political views are more dominant on X than other platforms.
Yeah, I mean it's maybe it's a little bit more reserved than you'd give it credit for. Actually, it can be quite balanced, and it can also be insane. If you want to choose the unhinged mode, then make sure you've not got any kids in the room. So Grok has this ability. It has this thing that sets it apart, which is it's tied to that data on X. And then Claude seems to have its own little niche, right? So they've trained their models really, really well on code generation, and not just the code generation that will make it perform really well in those kind of coding competition benchmarks. which I think that the AI companies are starting to game now. They know, how to make their models really good at passing these benchmarks or getting better scores in these benchmarks. But Claude has taken a different approach, and it's using kind of more real world coding challenges and problems. And the latest model, 3.7, that dropped a couple of weeks ago, has kind of elevated its ability to generate good code yet again. So it's still seen as one of the best models for generating code. It's also seen as a model that can generate quite natural sounding written content. So if you use ChatGPT a lot to help you write stuff, it's got a certain taste to it.
You can normally tell.
So I use it a lot, which means that I can tell when somebody else is, because there's just certain things that it does that are very GPT. I do try and spend a lot of time editing it to make it less GPT. And you don't tend to have that in the same way with Claude. In fact, I'd say Claude and Grok are probably better at writing kind of content. Maybe not like novels, but kind of content like a person would. They sound a bit more natural.
More natural language.
Yeah, GPT has a tendency to sound a bit more, I don't know, academic or verbose, or I don't know.
And again, does that come down to the training data? I guess it must.
I think it's not just the training data. I think it's like these things almost have personalities, right? They have their system prompts, and the training data will have an effect too. The way that they're put together. And the guys at Anthropic, when they were asked about, why is your model so good at code, they say it's because we build it differently. We do things different. So I don't know what that means, but there's some kind of secret sauce. But there's also the system prompts, which all these models have, and they do kind of define its personality, its behavior a bit. Yeah. So Grok's got this amazing ability to deal with live data and zeitgeisty stuff that's happening all the time because it's connected to X. Claude has this really great ability to write great code and quite natural sounding content. And then GPT, which is still my personal favorite. I think most punters kind of use that, but in the tech sphere, we're in the tech sphere, people can be a bit snobby, and sometimes GPT can get a bad rap. I really like it. And I think one of the reasons its motive, is that it's got this memory layer. So it knows a lot about you. It remembers a lot about you as a person.
It knows a lot about you.
Yeah. I spend too much of my life talking to it. I think there's a whole emerging bunch of data issues around this, I'm sure. But let's put that to one side for the minute, right? It's got this fantastic memory layer, and you can tell it to remember stuff, and it also will just decide when it wants to remember something. But that means when I'm chatting with it, it knows so much about, it's got so much context about what I'm doing at work, what my family's like, what their interests are, what my interests are, the things I do like, the things I don't like, the words I like to use, the words I don't like to use. And you can go in and you can inspect this memory. It started off, there's a few things in there, now it's like, massive. But as I was thinking about the future and all these different AI interfaces that we have at the moment, these different models, and what's going to keep you using one and not the other, or why are some people going to use this thing and some people are going to use that thing? It is about moats. And I think for me, the reason at the moment, at least, I will keep using ChatGPT is because it knows who I am. So, I've actually developed, by having a memory of me and deciding what's interesting and keeping that, it has, I don't want to use the word relationship. That sounds weird, right? But over time, you're building memories. This thing at least is building memories of you, right? So let's call it a relationship because I don't know what else to say. So this relationship builds over time, and as it understands more about you and more about your history and the journey that you've been on and stuff, that becomes really sticky. You don't want to give that up. And you don't want to go over here and I'll start using Grok now. No, it's nothing about me. I'm starting from day one. It's like, your friendships grow over time, right? And that's why No,
Just going to a
that's why.
dystopian place.
That's why, that's what a friendship is, and that's why they're valuable, and you don't want to ditch them. And that's why you keep going to those people and socializing with those people and that kind of thing. With this memory system, it creates this stickiness, and it creates something that becomes more valuable over time. So I think that's really, really interesting. And I think it's surprising, actually, that things like Claude don't have that. Claude is very cut down not as a model, as a chat application. It's very cut down. It doesn't do a lot. It doesn't even have an image generator, for example. But it does what it does really well. So yeah, you've got this situation where I think you're going to have a whole bunch of different AIs, and you're going to have different people that have like an affinity to one or the other, and for various reasons. But I think this memory thing, I think they're all going to end up having that, because I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. It's a bit of a surprise that that OpenAI hasn't made more of that, because you would have thought that your average user that might have it on their phone, because everyone's got it on their phone, I guess, in some form now, and they may like it, and over time they'll grow to like it more because of this reason. As you invest more time with it, it knows more about you, therefore it can give you better responses and treat you more in a way that you find appealing. So it's kind of a self-replicating loop. And so they'll pick up a new platform, and they won't like it as much, and they won't know why. They think, it's rubbish. But if they're probably one of the few at the moment that have kind of nailed that memory thing, it's almost like they've made a deliberate choice to not tell everyone that it's there, or to only, you can find out about it, but they've not made a big song and dance about it. It's like, we will learn about you over time, and we will get extract all of your knowledge, all of your information, all of your nuance, and therefore give you a better service. I guess if you said it like that, people will be scared of it, right?
Well, I've done a lot of conversations with GPT, and I've done a lot of thinking around this whole memory thing, because I think it's so important. Because the first time they brought it out, my instant reaction was, they're creating a massive honeypot of data here. Like I've been worried for years about the amount of data that Facebook collects and Google collects, and I don't want to be tracked, and I don't. So I was quite careful about data privacy. This thing has seemed to it's found a way of making that it's more valuable now for me, for it to know about me, than it is not. So I'm almost making an exception in my own reasoning, because I value what it can bring through having more data on me. Yeah. But once I found out that it was doing that, I was like, well, hang on a minute. Who gets to see this data? Do OpenAI have access to data? Could they ever have it? And it will tell you that it's completely private. But nevertheless, it raises a whole bunch of questions, because who's going to guarantee that stays private? Who's, is it protected? It's my personal information, right? So if they get hacked, what does that mean? Also, should I be able to manage what information it has on me, right? Maybe there's certain memories I don't want it to keep. Now you can actually do that, right? So you can go into its memory bank and you can delete its memories. So I suppose that's good, except there are millions of them, right? So to try and figure out what you're going to selectively delete is really, really hard. But then you can see a future, and this is kind of where I've been, thinking a lot around. I now want some other AI, for whatever purposes it might need, to understand some things about me. But I don't want it to know everything about me in the way that my AI knows everything about me. So, actually, a colleague of mine wrote a book on some of these concepts, and he referred to this concept of a digital doppelganger. Right, it's probably got another name in the kind of academic arena, but he was using this digital doppelganger, which was basically like, you've got an AI agent that's essentially acting as you or on your behalf, and it knows lots and lots of stuff about you. And now it wants to go off and it wants to book you a holiday, right? So it's now talking to a travel agent, AI agent, and it wants to share some of that information with this agent, because it wants some of your preferences and some of the things that are really important to you. But you don't want to go off and give it all these memories and this massive honeypot of data on you. Yeah. So how's that negotiation on preferences taking place. And again, in this book, I think it explores something along the lines of some kind of preference interchange system that these AIs essentially work with. But I think it's fascinating, right? Because this is where it's all going to go. And we started talking a lot about, agents and multi-agent systems, and they're right in their infancy at the moment. But when this becomes the norm, these things are really, really going to bubble up to the surface. You're going to want to share bits of yourself, but not all of yourself. And there are no mechanisms to do any of that yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously this has been a problem forever, right? Well, at least since the arrival of the internet and then, Web 2 and social media and all this kind of stuff. Like, people have been talking about these kind of ideas, I want to use Facebook, or I want to use Instagram, or I want to use whatever, but I don't, but I kind of want to loan them enough information about me for me to be able to use the tool chain that they've given me. But at the moment, the transaction is, you need to know everything about me to enable me to use it. And that's the current model for OpenAI as well, right? Is you get real value from it if you give all of yourself to it. And I think what we would like it to move to is a world where I own all of myself. Right. And I allow the bits of myself to be shared with a particular tool chain for me to extract the value from it. But that's an economic decision, isn't it? The economics of the industry have got to change to enable that.
It's an economic one, but it's also a technology one. So, one of the things I was exploring was, okay, well, but why do you have this memory, ChatGPT? Why do you own that? I want to own that. I want essentially the equivalent of LastPass or 1Password or whatever it is, some kind of digital memory vault that I own, right? And that's where my relationship is stored. And I give the chatbot access to that, so it can build up its memories of me in there. But I own that. It doesn't sit on OpenAI system or Elon's system or Google system or whatever. It's mine. And I think that needs to happen, but I think the space is so naive, and most people don't even realise what it's doing at the moment. That these conversations aren't really happening.
Yeah, which is always, it's always been true, even with social, isn't it? Like, people have always chosen the fact that it's cool, I enjoy it, it's convenient, it gives me what I want, it's free. Oh, no, that's fine. You can have everything about me. And it's a transaction that most people, vast majority of people, are not even considering, let alone are they willing to make. They probably will be willing to make it because it's convenient. People always choose convenience over security. It's just implicit right now. And I guess the default with the AI tooling that's emerged is that's just continued. It's going to take a full stop, isn't it? It's going to take a reason to change that.
Yeah, I have been working on an article about this kind of personal AI thing, and I think there are a couple of companies already that are beginning to explore this idea or released early versions of this kind of knowledge vault type concept, which is great, except none of the things out there use it yet. So
I do like the idea of the agentic me, the doppelganger that can go out and just use the various tools that are available, assuming we can figure out how we're going to pay for it all and all the rest of it. If I'm going to go and book a holiday, as you say, my agent will go and book a holiday and it'll be perfect for me, not because the holiday company knows everything about me, but because my agent does and is able to use the tooling on my behalf to create the perfect holiday that I would never be able to do myself. That would be incredible, right?
I think that is where we're heading. I think it's a bit further away than a lot of the tech bros would want you to believe. I think this is a long journey we're going to go on, but I think that's the inevitable destination.
Yeah, and all anyone is talking about at the moment is agents this, agents that. You've got an agent to do this, an agent to do that, and this agent can use that tool. And there's there's a lot of buzz and a lot of noise about this whole space. And obviously we've been talking about agents for some time. I think there's quite a lot of confusion now, I think, in the terminology around what is an agent and what do they mean. And its heart, though, an agent is a piece of software, right?
Yes,
and it uses things. I don't know why. So this seems to be a concept that anyone, if you're not going into the depths of the technology, like what it actually is from a technical point of view, finds really, really difficult to explain what it is. We drift into this kind of world of analogy and kind of loose connections. And every time, I was reading, what was I reading the other day? OpenAI and its agent framework, and which looks incredible. It's a really, really interesting piece of tooling. But when they were talking about agents, they seem to be interchangeably talking about agents and tools that agents would use, but calling them all agents. So, so there was a web browsing agent and there was a file reading agent. And I wonder if they're getting lost in the same problem of how do you communicate this to the layperson? Or is there genuinely a web of actual agents out there that are just so specific that they can only use one specific tool? So there is an agent that is using the web browser tool and they've called it the web browser agent. And is there an agent out there that's the file reading agent and the only thing it can do is read files? Or is it, I guess it depends on the complexity of the system, because the other option is there is one agent that's going off and saying, I need to read a file, so I'm going to use the file tool. And then I didn't find my information in there, so now I'm going to look for my information on the web, and it goes the other way.
It's a really good question.
Using them interchangeably doesn't seem to be particularly helpful in people understanding.
Yeah, so I went down a rabbit hole with this, several months ago, and that's why I wrote that piece on, what is agentic computing, past, present, and future, because I had all the same questions and I wanted to try and spell it out. And you're right, in some ways, the concept of an agent, you can apply that at multiple levels. So in the broadest sense, now ChatGPT can do stuff. It can use tools, right? It can browse, it can search the web, and it can use DALL-E, and it can write code in Python, right? ChatGPT fits the definition of an agent. It's got a brain and it's got a body. Mm-hmm. So I would call that a macro agent, right? It's a big agent. It's got a big collection of tools at its disposal, and it can do stuff. Then you look at what's happening with the agent frameworks at the moment. So from a software perspective, we want to start building these multi-agent systems. They are smaller, and they're more specialized. And there's many reasons why you want to do that. You tend to get a lot better results and more reliable results the narrower that the focus of that agent is. Mm-hmm. And I suppose it's true in life, right? If you look at people and the jobs that they do and the places of work that they go to, as humans, we specialize and we work together with other specialists to get stuff done. And that's exactly what these multi-agent frameworks are modeling, but at the software level. There's two ways to approach it at that level. You can have a small collection of multi-talented agents, right? So they have huge tool sets at their disposal. Maybe they're experts in many different things, and you can throw various different kinds of problems at them. The problem with that is you tend to get very inconsistent results. You could have a middle ground where you have quite specialized agents, and they still bear some resemblance, I suppose, to a worker given some context that's trying to get something done, and it still feels quite relatable to humans and the work that a human might do. And I think that's where people are thinking at the moment. By and large, I think these multi-agent frameworks are thinking about things in terms of personalities, quite defined roles with quite defined tool sets. But in this article, I was taking it to the step where, you were talking just a minute ago about, is a web browser agent, that specialist? Does that make sense? And that's where I think you start moving out of the realm of software systems and into the realm of software development, because in software development, we have gone on a journey over the last 50 years, I suppose, 20 years maybe, from procedural language to object-oriented languages and software development. So we are building stuff in terms of at the software level in terms of objects. And those objects can be big objects and they can be small objects, but we're modeling things inside the computer as objects. And those objects are doing really boring things like writing a file to disk. Mm-hmm. So we've got a file writer object. Now, I can foresee a paradigm shift where with this becomes so ubiquitous and the computing cost is reduced to nothing, that we stop thinking in terms of objects and we start thinking in terms of agents at the software level. So at the kind of nuts and bolts level. So you have an agent which is now so specific, all it's doing is writing files to the disk.
Right.
You could apply the concept of an agent to a very, very small task if you wanted to. At the moment, it doesn't seem to make sense because, you've got this LLM and it's massive and it's, it doesn't. Why would you do that?
So in that example, the agent wouldn't call the code or wouldn't call the object to write the file. It would decide how it was going to write the file. And much like my image example earlier, it would create a script each time to write the file. If it thought that was it would basically write disposable code to complete that task.
I wasn't actually thinking about it in quite that way. It was more conceptual. It's more like we're dealing with objects at the software level now.
Yeah.
You could get into a position where you're dealing with agents. So, you have a file writer agent, and whereas objects, they have their properties and they have behaviors. An agent has those things too, but it has some intelligence about it, so it knows when to hand off to other agents. So, the error logging agent might know that it needs to automatically hand off to the file writing agent to get these errors logged out to disk. So it's a conceptual level thing, and whether that ever transpires or not, I've got no idea. But the point is you can think about agents essentially on different levels. The macro level, the kind of minute level, but I think when most people talk about them, certainly when OpenAI talk about them, and Microsoft with semantic kernel and AutoGen and all those kind of frameworks, they're that middle ground. They're kind of closer to human specialists.
So I think I saw an example of what you're talking about yesterday. So yesterday I came across, and this has stormed the internet. I came across a product launch called same.dev. Now, on the face of it, it looks like copyright infringement as a service, right? The idea is that you put in a URL of a website and it will clone it. Exactly. Just clone it. And there are other kind of services that kind of do this. You give it a web page and it will grab all the files and create a new version or some approximation of it. So I signed up and I had a little go and just kind of see what it did. And what it seems to do is, I think, in the way you describe it, is it spins up this little army of agents that are trying to do things. So and it's all prompt led, and I guess this must be because they can't actually say, here's the clone button, copy all the stuff. Like, you have to type in, I would like to clone this website. So it's prompt, and you guide it through in kind of like a cursor AI type method. But you start off with, I want to clone dotrix.com, go. And then the first thing that pops up is the web browsing agent goes and browses and looks for dotrix.com. And it fires up the first page. It tells you what it's doing. I found the home page. This is interesting. This is what the company does. It's got these other sub pages. Shows you a picture of it. And then it creates a prompt. Effectively, it creates a prompt to itself to write the code to recreate the website. So it's not downloading the CSS files, and it's not downloading HTML. It's describing what it's seeing in a prompt, which is then handing it over to another agent, I suppose, that's really good at writing code. And then it generates, and then it spins up a container and it launches if you play with Cursor AI, you would have seen kind of, and you've given it the right access, it will kind of spin up servers and do all sorts of stuff for you. It does all that and it shows you that it's doing that, but it's doing it in a virtual machine on their servers. And it's using Anthropic behind the scenes to do this code bit. And you only know that because it's getting absolutely hammered right now and it keeps running out of tokens. So you get these errors pop up saying your Anthropic ID is running out of tokens. But so it's clearly got some specialist agent, which is using a web browsing tool to go and find the website, to display it, to describe it, to prompt itself, and then handing that prompt over to a code development agent to then write the code based on the prompt. And then it will build and show it. So I guess it's that kind of system, isn't it? It's understanding that one's good for one's kind of good for another, and knowing when to hand off and when to carry on. I'm assuming that the first prompt would have been no good at writing the code, or not creating the pixel perfect experience that.
So I like that from a demonstration point of view. I think it's actually probably quite a good example of how you could put together a multi-agent system that would essentially do what a human developer might do, which is I want to copy this website. Okay, well, I'm going to go and browse the website. I'm going to find out as many pages as I can. Then I'm going to look at the kind of style, and I'm going to try and recreate that style. Then I'm going to grab all the pictures. So I can see how that would translate quite well to a multi-agent system. What surprises me is why have they done it? Because people have been doing that. You've been able to do it for years, right? I could copy any website I wanted tomorrow without having to have an agent system to do it. Because, you can, all the code's there to download. The images can all be copied. So the CSS is there for everyone to see. So, I mean, my question is, why?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a lot of these tools, obviously, they're minimized and obfuscated, so it can be quite difficult to get to like the JavaScript and the underlying CSS and stuff. But I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can get there. So you're right. And they claim to be pitching it at developers. So it's kind of pitched as a front-end developer's kind of co-developer. They use it to spin up a boilerplate of a website or a landing page or something that you want, then you go and change it and make it look like yours. So it's like a coder. But to me, it just feels like a way of, scamming people, right? I'm going to recreate Amazon. And it's going to be called Amazon. And I'm going to sell loads of fake products just to get your credit card details. I mean, it feels like it's just made scamming really, really, really easy. And it's free. It's free. So you can connect it to your GitHub or whatever, and it will give you all the files it's generated. And it's crazy. That's it. As a tech demo, it's incredible, and it is pixel for pixel. It's identical. It's not like some of the others we've seen that you can see what they've done and it's approximate and it kind of works, but it's the same.
Do we think there are incoming lawsuits?
I mean, there must be. I mean, I guess the way they've worded it, I say, maybe they're trying to sidestep it, or maybe it's hosted in a place it doesn't matter, but there are pretty clear laws, right? I mean, you can't pretend to be someone you're not. You can't nick all their assets. You can't deliberately mislead the consumer to do something that is not true. It's completely bananas.
Yeah, because I suppose it does make those, you get those scam emails. Like Every's a good one, right? And it directs you to a site that just looks just like Every, except there are a few things that don't quite ring true, or some bad English on there. Yeah. I suppose that, it would make that stuff a whole lot easier. Yeah, potentially.
Exactly. It's essentially, deep fake for e-commerce, or banking. You're sticking, your bank in there. It's like, obviously most savvy people would still pick it, but most people are not as savvy as you would hope.
So it's like, is this a brand new thing? Has it just landed?
I think it landed as we are recording on Thursday, the 13th of March. I think it landed yesterday.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, not come across it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, it was just crazy. Just that moment you get, when you start using Cursor and you see it just spinning stuff up in the background, and if you give it control of your machine, it does all sorts of crazy stuff. And I don't know if you've done any of this with kind of the kind of MCP stuff and the servers you can get running off the back of that. You see it's like spinning stuff, bang, 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 all over the place.
Yeah, well, and this is the way, it's going, isn't it? So we've seen stuff like Operator come out and it can browse the web. And I think what's the one that we were looking at the other week, Proxy. And you're seeing these kind of gradual evolution of these AI tools that are acting more autonomously, introducing kind of agentic concepts. But I think we're just about to get blown away by something else that takes that, times 10. Because the other thing that's dropped this week that everyone's talking about now, or certainly in my circles, is something called Manus AI. So yeah, a few months ago, China dropped DeepSeek R1. Right. So DeepSeek, they've been around for a while. They've been producing these really good models, and then R1 comes out, and it's the first model that they produced that can reason like O1 does. It was the first model ever, I think, to be released to the public that described its thought process, that allowed you to see its thought process. And it actually got OpenAI to change the game and then expose a little bit of the thought process on its models. And it could do it all drastically cheaper. The tokens, dollars per token or whatever, was so much cheaper because it used a different type of reinforcement learning techniques and stuff like that to reduce the cost of developing the model and the cost of using the model. So that was big. That was big news, and it was a big kind of wake up call for the West, because now China were firmly entering the AI race and proving actually they were a step ahead of the competition. They were producing stuff that was cheaper to use and actually more advanced. So that does settle for a little bit, as it not very long as is the case these days. And then last week, I think it was Friday, Saturday last week, something like that. This other Chinese company released this thing called Manus AI, which is an agent like Operator, but dialed up to 11. So this thing can just can whiz around the internet, fire up 10 different windows at the same time, do all the things that deep research can do, Operator can do, the stuff that you were talking about with same.dev. It's like it combines all the stuff that's out there at the moment into one mega agentic tool.
Right.
And people are raving about it. They're kind of saying, I didn't believe the hype, and now I've used it. I'm like, okay, this is a really big deal. Now it's invitation only. I've not been one of the lucky few, so I can't really comment on it. Only on the noise that it's generating on socials at the moment. But yeah, this could be another one of those things where where it becomes a bit more open and general access lands, and people see what it does. Another one of those moments where, you thought what you had now was where it was at and was amazing, and that, just something comes along and blows it out of the water and dials it back up. And it's this thing of, I've got this agentic system that goes off and can research and book my holiday, that can design me this application, that can, it seems to bring everything together. In a way that hasn't quite been done yet. So again, I'm speaking quite vaguely because I've not been able to play with it. But
it's interesting that all this is happening in public, and I think this hasn't happened before. When we've had kind of these technical waves, products tend to get released, and they were good. They were useful. They were the thing. They were basically what they intended to be. But this whole AI wave seems to be almost like developing in public. Like something comes out and it does something which is kind of cool, but they make us know that this is just the beginning, and it's only going to get better. And I think we've had this, with a lot of the pushback on maybe some of the engineering, the code creation stuff, is that the code's not amazing yet, or it's not so good at this, or in this particular situation, it's not very helpful, and then it getting written off at a stroke, and trying to reinforce the idea that well, yes, you're right, it's not as good as it could be right now. But this is just the beginning. Like, this is just a sample. It's a toy. It's an experiment. It's a demo, effectively. It's what the first Tesla was compared to your shiny new electric BMW. It shows what the future looks like. And it was interesting. The same.dev release note, its final line on the bottom was a phrase I've seen thrown around. Actually, a few different people have used it. I don't know if it's a famous quote from someone. But it said it's never going to be as bad as this. It's like this is the worst version of this you're ever going to see, and it's only going to go bang from here.
What's that saying? That people have a tendency to overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but grossly underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years, or something like that. I think that's, I see this a lot, and it really winds me up, mainly because we've lived through a small number, but a number of technical waves, mobile and cloud, and we've seen that all the same stuff. It's not going to do this, and it's not good enough at doing this, and then you roll the clock forward 10 years, and it's just everywhere, and it's widely accepted. So you always see the same objections, because people always underestimate the ability for the technology to continue to develop and progress and mature over time. And you're seeing that at the moment with all of this Gen AI stuff. It was only 2022 when ChatGPT was kind of released to the public, so that's not very long ago. And in some ways, right now, it feels like almost like the early days of the App Store. When the iPhone came out, and it was amazing because someone had released an app with like a beer glass, and you could tilt it and it kind of made the beer in a glass. And everything that happened was kind of new and fun and exciting. And now you look at those beer apps and the fart apps, and like, well, what the? Yeah, they're stupid, right? But we're in this kind of age of wonder with AI, and every 2 weeks you're still getting this thing that's come out that's never happened before. And I love those early App Store days. I thought that was really, really exciting. And I like what's happening now because it's really, really exciting. But it's also exhausting.
Yeah.
the pace of change and the speed at which all this new stuff's coming out, and the speed at which it's evolving.
Yeah. It's worth remembering, isn't it, that's happened before. That the excitement of the silliness of the App Store is what drove a whole industry to the point where I can't remember the last time I looked at the App Store now.
No.
It's all now so ubiquitous. There's no surprise. There's no, well, of course, if you need something to do something, there'll be something in the App Store, and maybe I'll look for it. But actually now it's also ingrained in everything else that it's just not wonder anymore. It's normal. And we're right at the beginning of that curve where everything is full of awe and wonder. But eventually it will just become ingrained in everything that we do. We're at that level where it will all change and everything will be different.
Yeah, and you couldn't imagine a world without apps now, could you? That's how you get stuff done. In fact, most of the chat apps we're talking about today are sitting there on your phone, and that's the primary mechanism by which you use them. I do want to talk about this MCP thing. The reason it's important is because some things just win because they're newer. It's like we all started using REST, didn't we, as an API thing?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. It was slower. It was text-based. It was like a backward step, but in some ways. But everyone thought it was cool because it was JSON and you could read it and blah, 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 blah. And it did actually turn out to have a load of benefits as well. But I think mainly we just, as developers, we used it because it was new. And it was people, it built traction.
Well, that was plagued like the JavaScript community for years, isn't it? Like, whatever the shiny new framework was, the JavaScript guys would just use that instead and rip up everything that they'd done before, just use this new framework.
Still are. Yeah, and then you've got MCP that's coming out, and it's an AI native way of doing these APIs. And is it better? I think it probably is, but does it matter? Probably not, because it's newer. And so you're gonna have this situation where you've got these developers coming in, they're building AI applications, and they're getting involved in the new kind of tool set and the new cool stuff that's happening. And MCP is going to be the thing. So you're going to see this massive adoption of that and a focus on MCP as the way of sharing data across systems, boundaries, apps, rather than REST APIs or whatever. Not necessarily because it's better or even it's the right use case, but because it's newer and it's cool.
It's the first attempt, I guess, of them putting a standard together, isn't it? It's the first thing that might. And I guess the thing that there's other stuff will be built on top of it and it will change over time, but it's the first attempt to kind of bring it all together and bring some standards.
Yeah, and I remember kind of reading about it when it first came out and thinking, this is really cool. It's like someone needs to be doing this. It's really interesting that Anthropic are doing it. But because it's Anthropic, is it ever going to take off? Because there's such fierce competition among all these different kind of LLM providers at the moment. But it's something that's happened in the last couple of weeks where it's sort of built this critical level of momentum. And, a few months ago, nobody knew what it was. Then some people started to know what it was. And now everybody in the developer community is starting to talk about it. So I said right back then, this is one to watch. If it develops and it gets used more, then this could be a really big thing. And you can see it at that kind of critical momentum point right now. Still early days, but it looks to me as though it does stand a really good chance of becoming an open standard and gaining mass adoption. So watch this space, I suppose.
Yeah. You said something interesting there. Like we saw this with the cloud about the fierce competition and how much space is there really for, for various competing parties. Obviously with cloud, we sort of ended up with 3, but not really. Really, it was only 2, wasn't it? It was a fight between Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, and we ended up with AWS and Microsoft with a little bit of Google on the side. There are some diehard fans. You kind of feel like with all these major players, and there still are quite a number of them, dealing with the kind of the models and the AI side. Surely there's not space for that many. You would expect it to distill down to a couple, 2 or 3, with maybe some specialists that are really good at a particular thing.
Yeah, I've got this concept in my head of these LLMs being quite fundamental, like almost like the operating system level. And again, it does feel like those early days of cloud and those early days of mobile. Back then you still had BlackBerry who were trying to develop their own thing. You had Samsung, then you had Google with Android, then you had Windows Phone doing their thing. Obviously Apple. You had I think between Firefox, one of these, when they tried to get
there's a
Firefox
Fire
phones,
phone.
there were lots of things coming out, lots of these different operating systems trying to compete for your phone. And really two one, didn't they? Everyone else, died a death, and we've got Android and we've got iOS. I do feel like it feels very similar. We've got all these big fundamental LLMs now, and this is global. So you've got DeepSeeks, you've got OpenAI, Microsoft are building their own models. You've got Gemini, and Google feels like it feels like it could be the Windows Phone of LLMs, right? Because it's really good, Gemini, but nobody's using it.
No one's using it.
Because
In fact, you use it because you have to. Like, if you're in the ecosystem, it pops up by default, isn't it? And even then, you kind of tend to ignore it.
But in the same way that the Windows dropped the ball on their mobile operating system, and it just didn't get the traction. And ultimately, it took a very long time, but ultimately it died. And there are a whole bunch of things competing for our attention right now. And like we said at the beginning, you've got these sort of the vibe attracts the tribe or whatever. And you see you've got different people gravitating towards these different LLMs, but there can't be room for all of them, surely. This has got to narrow down over time, and winners are going to emerge.
And this is where stuff like the MCP stuff or whatever other standards emerge are really important, right? Because fundamentally, most organizations are not going to care, right? They're going to, in the same way that you choose a cloud, you're Azure or you're AWS, or maybe you're a little bit of both if you're that way inclined, but most people will choose an ecosystem to get the best out of it. These LLMs and the other types of model that we've talked about before are effectively going to become, as you say, the operating system, the ecosystem that you build on top of. You build the application layer on top of it, and you may choose to build it on, the OpenAI one, or you may choose on the Anthropic one, or whatever it is. But you're basically going to pick one. You're going to pick a cloud. You're going to pick a model. You're going to pick an ecosystem to engage in and be a part of. I guess there's a slight risk that you might pick the wrong one and it disappears. But that's kind of where these standard things like MCP are really important.
I agree, but the industry is still so mature. That's not the case at the moment. People are still thinking, well, I might pick Microsoft, let's say, to host all my stuff. I might use Azure AI Foundry to do that. But I'm going to pick and choose my models, and I might have this one over here from Alibaba, and I might have this one from China. So I think that's probably not going to be the case. I think he's more like you're suggesting. You're gonna fall into a line with some kind of organizational wrapper, and then MCP becomes really important because, like the REST APIs of today, that's the thing that allows these LLMs to talk to each other as though they're the same thing, and they understand and share that context.
Amazing. Well, I think that's it.
Another one in the bag.